Right, enough of the e4, e5 stuff. Now it's time to look at what to do against pawn to d4. Guys, this will be an interesting video and I advise you to keep watching up to the end. Don't skip. By the way, this video is sponsored by Casper Chess, where you can find our new E5 defense course, which is now complete. Yes, that's a selfish advert, but let's get right into the video. You see, we all want to play the King's Indian defense, which resembles the Peer's defense in some way, but the problem is with this highlighted C file. The problem to do with the C file, especially if white castles long and starts attacking on the king's side. For example, let me demonstrate what I'm talking about. Say white plays e4 and you respond with a Perk defense, a very cool opening. After d4, you play knight f6, attacking the e4 pawn, then white defends with knight c3, and then you go pawn to g6, and then at this point white plays any of these highlighted moves on the board, precisely pawn to f3, the so-called 150 attack. Well, the thing is, white's long-term plan is to develop the dark squad bishop and the queen, then castle long and start attacking on the king's side as soon as they can. So this is just one opening for white that disturbs the typical ideas of the Peer's defense or the Perk defense, among other sidelines. And the most painful part is that you need to start compromising, playing unnatural moves like pawn to c6, b5, queen a5, and all those theories you learn online. These are all unnatural, to be honest. You're just compromising, trying to survive. Another example is in the case of the King's Indian defense, where white starts with d4 and then you go knight f6 first, then they play c4, you go pawn to d6, and then say white plays knight c3, then you go pawn to g6, and after pawn to e4, you play bishop g7, and then they go knight to f3, you castle short. By the way, the main difference between the Peer's defense, or what you guys call the Perk defense, and the King's Indian defense is the development of this c pawn. So in the King's Indian defense, we see this pawn on c4, while in the Peer's defense, the c pawn is usually on c2. Again, in the King's Indian defense, white has an option to go pawn to f4 if they so wish, or pawn to f3 first, which is the same-ish variation where they start pawn storming on the king side. For example, if you castle short, they then play bishop e3, trying to castle long, and now you have to start compromising, playing timely moves that you always have to memorize, like pawn to c5 in this position, which doesn't even look natural at the moment, cause I mean, why are you giving up a free pawn? Sooner or later, white is going to start attacking on the king side and mess up your pawn structure like this. Queen d2 is coming, teaming up with the dark squad bishop, destroy your bishop on g7. White doesn't even have to castle long. If they so wish, they can keep their king on the center like that. You have no way to reach out to that king in no time. So while the Peer's defense and the Kid are good openings, we rarely see them at the top level due to their passiveness, their passive nature, their non-committal moves that requires you to know a lot of theory and memorizing a lot of lines. Which is why in today's video, I'm gonna show you a very simple universal system that you can use against the queen's pawn game on the first move. Let's look at that. So after white begins with pawn to d4, you don't know the opening they want to play. Maybe it's the London system or the Collar system, the Stonewall attack, the queen's gambit, or just the knight to f3 normal line. So you want to keep your options open. Just play pawn to d6. And in this position, there are four main responses that we see. White can play pawn to c4, bishop f4, knight f3, or even pawn to e3. We are going to look at all these in today's video. So let's begin with pawn to e3 to keep it very simple. Say on move 2, white plays pawn to e3. And here is your main plan. This will always be your plan, you guys. You first go pawn to c5. Sooner or later, you will play queen a5 check and then get back that pawn. As simple as that. So c5, queen a5, queen takes c5, and then you continue playing your Perk defense or your King's Indian defense. So our main goal is to open the c file so that should white castle long, at least we have some attack going on from the queen side. Now you know. So say after pawn to c5, white takes. As usual, you just go queen a5 check. White has to do something, and then you simply take back the c5 pawn. There are some instances where you can just take the c5 pawn with your D pawn, and Stockfish kind of likes that. But anyways, just take with your queen. And spoiler, our queen will most of the times go back to A5 in case of any attacks by white. And in case of any deadly attack, we have Queen C7 in the near future. This is very important for you guys to understand. Anyways, say white plays Knight F3. Now you can continue playing your normal perk defense with all the ideas you learned in your perk studies, beginning with the move Knight F6. And say after Bishop D3, you go G6, everything becomes simple from here. Bishop G7, say Knight E4. Knight E4 attacks your queen and the other knight. So you just simplify the game as follows. Thankfully, your dark squad bishop is now free, but just to give you a heads up, your queen's knight may be developed as follows through D7 up to F6. So you're going to place a new knight on F6 since you traded off your king's knight. So Knight D7 and say pawn to C3 is played. This is when you can play Knight F6 or just castle short. In case of pawn to B4, since you don't have Queen A5 anymore, this is where I said you can just retreat your queen back to C7 and play Knight F6. By the way, in this position, if pawn to B4, you can just take on C3 and then come back to C7. So the safest square for our queen in case of any attacks is A5 at best. At worst, we have the C7 square for our queen. Done. Now let's say after D4, D6, E3 and pawn to C5, white doesn't take, but they rather go pawn to D5. Well, now that you managed to open your queen side in advance, it now makes sense to continue with your perk defense ideas or your King's Indian defense ideas. And spoiler, if white plays C4 in the near future, we'll transpose this into the Bengal Gambit. So you can just continue with your normal perk defense strategies. Say pawn to C4. Again, G6 is okay, but not too good due to white's Knight C3 possibility. Therefore, I recommend playing in the style of the Bengal Gambit, beginning with pawn to B5, or like the wing gambit, right? The point is, if pawn takes, you sacrifice the second pawn, and again, if they take, you now take with your bishop, and after bishop takes, you take with your knight. This is how we play the wing gambit. As you can see, the eval bar still remains unchanged, which means Stockfish approves playing like this. If Knight C3 is played, you simply go G6, you now continue with your King's Indian defense ideas. And just to hint you up, the killer piece in the Bengal Gambit is our dark squared bishop on G7. Sooner or later, we want to free up this bishop, which is doing a great job along this highlighted diagonal. And how do we do that? Watch. Here is the middle game plan for you to always remember. Be it in classical chess, rapid, blitz, or bullet, you want to play Knight D7, Knight B6, and Knight C4 to put more pressure on the B2 pawn, which is also indirectly attacked by our dark squad bishop. This will also make white's knight on C3 to be very weak. Your other plan is to go Knight D7 and then Knight E5. The knight on E5 together with your other knight on B4 will do a lot of wonders in the middle game and in the end game. So in the Bengal Gambit, it's not really about your rooks, sitting along the B file and along the A file. While that is great, the secret lies in how you maneuver your knights as highlighted on the board. Once you play like this, I can guarantee you guys to say, you will come back to this video and say, thank you, Casper. Now, can we get your E5 defense course? And I'll say yes, because our complete E5 defense course will teach you how to beat the Italian game, the Ruy Lopez, the Scotch game, the Scotch Gambit, the Vienna Gambit, the 3 knights opening, the 4 knights game, the Goring Gambit, and so many other E4 openings. You better check it out. Bad manners. Anyways, say white plays pawn to E4. This is when you can go Knight D7, intending to go Knight E5, maybe, or Knight B6 and then Knight C4 to pressurize the B2 pawn, just like I said. And if Bishop G5, you can continue with your plan or play some prophylactic moves like H6, trying to see what white is up to. Say Bishop H4, now you go Rook E8, and then you continue playing as highlighted. There are so many plans that you can go with. Sometimes you can even play Queen A5 or Queen B6, Rook A7, Rook B8, or maybe just continue with the same plan that I just showed you. So it's up to you. These pawns don't go anywhere in the Bengal Gambit. Ask any coach or any master, they will tell you this. Anyway, for now we are done with the E3 line. Now let's look at the C4 line, which I like calling the Queen's Gambit setup. So after D4 and D6, say white plays pawn to C4, and I'll be very quick. Once again, you don't want to play any other moves. Your first 3 openings will always be the same. C5, and if pawn takes, you go Queen A5 check. Quite alright if Bishop D2 is played, you will just take on C5 and leave your queen there. In case of any attacks, you'll play Queen C7 in the future. But if Knight C3 is played, once again you have an option to take with the pawn if you want, so that you can go B6 and Bishop B7, that's if you want, or just take with the queen. You also want to play S6 given a chance. Say pawn to E4 is played, now you can go Knight F6, you continue playing your normal perk defense. But wait a second, this time white has played Bishop E3 too early, attacking our queen. So again, Queen C7 is good, but Queen A5 is better because it creates pressure on E4. I said whenever your queen is under attack by this dark squad bishop, just go Queen A5 first. Think of playing Queen A5 before going Queen C7. With Queen A5, you are pinning this knight, so taking on E4 now becomes a possibility. So white has to do something about this, defending it, and then you continue playing your perk defense as shown on the board. You can castle short if you want, but anticipating this move, you first of all go Knight C6, that's if you want. Once again, if Knight F3 is played, well, again you can just castle short, or play Knight D7, followed by Knight E5. So in our improved perk defense, or what I'm calling the universal opening against D4, our main middle game plan is to maneuver our knight as highlighted. Knight D7 followed by Knight E5 is an interesting strategy. You can also play S6 if you want, or whatever. So just castle long. Anyways, back on move 1 after C4, C5. This time if white doesn't take your C pawn, and let's say they play D5. Well, what did I say whenever you see this kind of pawn structure? You rush with the Bangkok Gambit, right? There are 3 good options that you may consider in this position, such as pawn to G6 or playing Knight F6 first or B5. But I highly recommend going into an early Bangkok Gambit or Bangkok transposition with pawn to B5. The problem with playing G6 or Knight F6 is that white may play Knight C3 stopping pawn to B5. So just go pawn to B5 first, so that after pawn takes you go A6 as usual. After pawn takes you go bishop takes. Now it even becomes hard for white to play E3 or E4 because you're going to take away their castling rights. So they have to play something like G3, which they do most of the times, and then you continue with your normal perk defense ideas. You castle short or play Knight BD7 first. Say Knight C3 is played, and now your other idea is to go Knight G4 and then play Knight GE5. Remember, this is how you maneuver your knights. Sometimes you can play Knight B6, then you play Knight D7, whatever. I showed you what to do with the knights, so I won't repeat that. So say Knight B6 is played, white plays Rook E1. So once again, I highly recommend going Knight C4 to Knight E5. Knight C4 provokes the B3 weakness that indirectly activates our dark squad bishop. For example, you go Knight C4. If they play B3, see how weak white's position turns to be. Here you can even play Queen A5 or Knight D7, just like I said, because if pawn takes knight, you have bishop takes knight and you will win one of the rooks. If bishop D2 is played, just an example, you can take that bishop, and now there's a problem because our dark squad bishop is eyeing that knight, right? So queen takes D2 is forced. Now you play Queen A5. See the power of the Bangkok Gambit, you guys. And now after Rook SC1, you can castle short and continue attacking. They play Rook C2, but you can play Rook A7, doubling up their rooks, and you also do the same. Knight E4 may be played. You can exchange queens in this position because your position looks great. Bishop B7, Rook C2, Knight B6, Knight C3 for example. Now you take on C3 with your bishop, Rook takes, Rook takes, Rook takes, Rook takes. I just wanted to show you one of the ways in which this game may continue. I can tell you guys are already dozing because you love watching videos on quick traps and checkmating your opponents very quickly. Let me know if you want me to continue with part 2 in tomorrow's video, and I'll do the needful. So In today's video, we looked at the e3 line and the c4 line. So hopefully in tomorrow's video, we'll look at the f3 line and finally the London version of this, the bishop f4 line. Now, time for you to go and check out my new e5 defense course, which I have also linked in the comment section down below. And I'm glad to say, so far it has received a lot of attention and people are getting it like crazy. So it's an opening response that you try against White's e4 opening. You're going to learn how to play against the Scotch, the Ruy Lopez, the Bishop's opening, 3 Knights opening, the 4 Knights game, the Vienna game, even the Italian game. So it's the complete e5 defense course that I just launched with my team. You better go and check it out. Thank you so much for watching this video. Until next time, have a wonderful day. Bye bye.